An old woman with a high school grad disgrace to the company, let alone a young future employee.
The words were so cruel, I didn't even know how to respond.
Don't you feel pathetic standing among all these young people? Oh, wait, someone like you probably doesn't even have that kind of pride.
The words high school grad began to catch the attention of those around us. I could feel their judgmental gazes, and it made me feel sick. The thought of being ridiculed in front of 76 other new hires filled me with a mix of frustration and anger.
Well, whatever. Just work yourself to the bone under me.
And then I quit. I spoke before I could even think. But I have no regrets. The next day at 10 a.m., I called Emma. Turn on the news. Before she could say anything, I said those words. I can't wait to see her reaction. I'm Nancy, 32 years old. I live with my 65-year-old mom, just the two of us. I've never known my dad. Since I can remember, it's always been me and my mom. I don't even know if he's alive, but I've never felt sad about that. What I do remember is how hard my mom worked, raising me all on her own. Right after I started high school, my mom fell seriously ill. I gave up on going to college and started working to cover her medical bills. But as a high school graduate, I couldn't land a decent job. So I juggled various part-time gigs, barely making enough for our living expenses and her treatment. One day, I came across an advertisement that changed everything. It was a huge ad on a building billboard, and I was instantly captivated. I want to create something like that. I want to make a living with my designs. I became deeply determined. To make my dream come true, I started entering competitions and sharing my work on social media while taking on small design jobs here and there. However, as a self-taught freelance designer, I couldn't earn enough to make a living right away. The only offers I got were for minor projects. With little success, my confidence kept dwindling. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Even though I understood that in my head, I couldn't bring myself to give up. If I'm only going to get low-paying jobs as a high school grad anyway, why not chase my dream while working part-time? My mom, who was in and out of the hospital, supported my dream wholeheartedly.
I'm sorry for all the struggles I've caused you, Nancy. You should follow the path that makes you happy.
That was my mom's favorite phrase. Hearing it over and over again, to the point where I practically had it memorized, gave me a huge push forward. One day, I received a message on social media from someone claiming to be a director at an advertising agency. They said they liked my designs and wanted to discuss them further. I jumped at the opportunity. Though I felt nervous about taking on such a big project, I was more excited about making the most of this chance. When I arrived at the company on the scheduled day and time, the size of the building was overwhelming. Gathering my courage, I stepped inside and started looking for the elevator.
Are you Nancy? Emma asked me to escort you to the director's office.
A tall man politely handed me his business card. He introduced himself as Steve, the director's secretary. The name felt vaguely familiar, so I looked up at him and he smiled warmly.
This way.
He started walking as he said this, and I hurried to follow him. When we entered the director's office, the sound of high heels clicked rhythmically as a woman in a bright red suit emerged from the back.
Oh, so you're Nancy. Based on your designs, I imagined someone younger.
I didn't know how to respond to her comment. Sensing my awkwardness, Steve cleared his throat, prompting her to get to the point.
Well, no matter. I'm Emma, the director of this company. Let's get straight to it. Can you show me your designs?
While I was preparing my design portfolio, Steve brought me a cup of coffee. Thank you.
You're welcome.
When I expressed my gratitude, Steve smiled again. I couldn't help but be captivated by his good looks, but Emma quickly reprimanded me.
Steve belongs to me.
She entwined her hand with his as he handed her coffee, making her point clear. Even someone as clueless as me could figure it out. Oh, so that's the kind of relationship they have. Hurriedly, I handed my design portfolio to Emma. These are the ones I posted on social media, and these are unpublished. Emma snatched the designs and began examining them one by one, her expression sharp and critical. As I worried that the sound of my pounding heart might echo throughout the room, Emma suddenly stopped flipping through the pages.
Steve, what do you think of this one?
My heart raced even faster, wondering if one of my designs had caught her attention. Steve carefully took the design she handed him and studied it closely.
It's great. It strikes a balance between delicacy and boldness, leaving a strong impression on the viewer.
Hearing those words directed at me made me incredibly happy. I was about to express my gratitude, but Emma's voice interrupted me.
You're right. The roughness actually works in its favor. Make a copy of this one and send it to the client.
Emma spoke only to Steve, leaving me no chance to say anything.
Understood.
After replying to Emma, Steve turned to me and continued.
Nancy, could we move over there for a detailed discussion?
Emma was already at her desk, focused on her computer without a glance in my direction. I gave her a brief goodbye and left the director's office with Steve. As soon as we stepped out, exhaustion washed over me. I felt as though I'd been judged, and honestly, it left me feeling uneasy.
I'm sorry. Emma's attitude might have been a bit harsh. Did it upset you?
No. I just thought, maybe this is how interviews usually are. It was a good learning experience. I carefully chose my words, and Steve smiled warmly again.
Despite how she seems, I believe Emma liked you. It's rare for her to personally scout someone.
Hearing that made me happy. Knowing there was someone who appreciated my designs was the biggest encouragement I could ask for. Steve led me to a conference room, where he gave me a full explanation of the project. There were two important points. First, the copyright of the designs would be transferred to the company, and sharing them on social media or with other companies was strictly prohibited. Second, if the client liked my work, there was a possibility I could join the company and work as an advertising designer. It was an ideal opportunity, and I immediately agreed without hesitation. Thank you. I look forward to working with you. But Steve's expression turned slightly complicated.
Are you sure about this? Even if your work gets published in a magazine, your name won't appear anywhere.
At his words, I burst into laughter. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that your concern is so far off the mark. I couldn't help myself. The warm glow in Steve's eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by a hint of sadness. I have no interest in making a name for myself or becoming a famous designer. I just want my work to leave an impression on people. That's enough for me. So I'm thrilled to have this opportunity for my designs to reach a wider audience.
I see. Well, then, I'll take care of it from here.
As I chose my words carefully, the gentle light returned to his eyes. I almost asked if we'd met somewhere before, but I held my tongue. There's no way I could say something as cliche as that. The next day, Steve contacted me to inform me that my design had officially been selected for use in the advertisement. I rushed to share the news with my mom.
That's amazing, Nancy. You've worked so hard.
I couldn't hide my surprise at how thin my mom's arms felt as she hugged me. I want to help my mom, who's sacrificed so much for me. If I could secure a job at this company, maybe we could explore other treatment options for her. However, the magazine that was published betrayed my expectations. The advertisement used was not the design I had created. To be precise, it had been altered in several places. Panicked, I immediately contacted Emma. What's going on with that ad? Wasn't it supposed to use my design? It wasn't Emma who responded to my abrupt approach without a greeting. It was Steve.
Nancy, I'm very sorry. Please allow me to explain properly.
His calm voice brought me back to my senses. Embarrassed by my outburst, I followed his instructions and headed to the company.
Nancy, we've been expecting you.
Steve was waiting for me in front of the building.
Hello, can we come in?
When Steve opened the door to the director's office, Emma looked at me with annoyance.
What? I'm busy.
Steve answered on my behalf, as I hesitated under her sharp gaze.
Emma, regarding the advertisement, could you please explain why Nancy's design wasn't used as it was?
Though his tone was calm, there was an undeniable authority in his voice.
Edits are standard in this industry. Did you really think your amateur design would be used without changes? This industry isn't that easy.
Emma's harsh words left me speechless. Then, at the very least, I would have appreciated an explanation of the changes beforehand. Emma scoffed at me as I managed to get the words out.
Explain. The copyright belongs to us. We can change whatever we want, however we want. If we had to explain every little thing, we'd never get anything done. You only get a say in these things when you're a top designer.
I finally understood the true implications of transferring copyright. I didn't mind my name not appearing, but having my design altered without my consent was unbearable. I had poured my heart into creating it. But the copyright transfer had been my decision, and the ad was already out, leaving me no room to act.
If we're done here, can you leave? Hey, Steve.
Emma instructed Steve to escort me out and went back to her work. As I followed Steve out of the director's office, watching his silent back, anger began to slowly rise within me. Why didn't you tell me the design might be changed? I knew it wasn't fair to blame Steve, but I couldn't help voicing my frustration. Steve stopped and turned to face me.
I should have explained it properly from the start. I'm truly sorry.
His sincere demeanor calmed the anger rising within me.
If it's all right with you, could we talk a bit about the future?
His words made me tilt my head in curiosity. Apparently, there was a final interview for new hires scheduled for a month later.
If you're interested in joining our company, I'd like you to bring a new design to that interview. I hope you don't mind, but I did a little research. Between your mom's medical expenses and your own living costs, things must not be easy. If you join us, you'll have a stable income. Would you consider it?
His words were kind, but if I joined the company, what happened this time could easily happen again. Would I stick to my creative vision or trade it for financial security by becoming part of the company? Let me think about it. I couldn't give an answer right away. Over the next week, I worked on a new design in between my part-time jobs, little by little, until I finished it. With that design in hand, I pitched it to various companies, including advertising agencies, production studios, and design offices. However, as a nearly unknown designer with almost no track record, I was turned away at nearly every door. Then, I received a message about an entrance exam being held by the largest advertising agency in the industry. The test was a presentation of a design I had created. I immediately confirmed my participation. On the day of the exam, the venue was packed with people. Are they all designers like me? Not being used to presenting in front of large crowds, I felt like my heart was about to leap out of my chest.
Next up is Nancy.
When my name was called, I stepped forward. At that moment, my mind went completely blank, and I felt as if I might faint.
Thank you very much.
The recruiter's voice brought me back to reality, and I realized there was loud applause echoing in my ears. Honestly, I had no memory of what I had said. Feeling my hands and feet trembling, I couldn't help but find it a little funny how nervous I must have been. They announced that only the selected candidates would be contacted later, and the entrance exam came to an end. A week passed with no word, and I was about to give up, thinking that getting into the top company had only ever been a dream. Then, a message arrived.
Thank you for taking our entrance exam. We were very impressed with your work and were considering you for hire, so it's a great disappointment to hear that you've declined. We wish you the best in your future endeavors.
I couldn't believe what I was reading. Declined? What does that mean? I never declined. I immediately called the Human Resources Department to find out what was going on. However, the recruiter told me that a woman claiming to be Nancy had called to decline the offer. They had already selected someone else in my place, so there was no way to reverse the decision. What on earth is happening? Of course, I hadn't made any such call. Who could have impersonated me and why? No one but my mom even knew I had taken the entrance exam. If this impersonation hadn't happened, would I already have been hired? The thought filled me with a mix of frustration and sadness, my emotions swirling chaotically. That night, I received another message, this time from Steve.
Apologies for reaching out this way, as I didn't have your contact info. Have you given any thought to our final interview opportunity? I've already spoken with the recruitment team and Emma. I'd be thrilled if we could work together, so I hope you'll consider it.
I never expected him to extend such kindness after the way I had acted. Although my designs might be altered, the prospect of doing creative work again was exciting, and I had no other leads. Continuing as a freelancer wouldn't allow me to ease my mom's burden. I made up my mind. I'll join the company and build a track record. Once I've gained skills and trust, I can compete with my own designs. Steve, thank you for reaching out. I deeply apologize for my previous behavior. I'd like to participate in the final interview. Thank you for the opportunity. After carefully reviewing my message multiple times, I sent it with trembling hands. Of course, there was no guarantee I'd be hired yet. What design should I bring to the final interview? I only have 2 weeks to prepare, so I need to move quickly. 2 weeks later, I attended my first ever final interview. Several interviewers took turns asking questions, as if assessing my worth. As I watched the interviewers review my resume and design portfolio, I couldn't shake the illusion that they were silently telling me I had no value. Is this what getting a job is about? Only those who can withstand this kind of pressure can succeed. I felt so out of place just being there that I couldn't muster any confidence in the outcome. So, when I received the offer letter, I was so overwhelmed with joy that I cried. I reread the instructions for the orientation countless times, unable to believe it. My mom shared in my excitement, celebrating with me. I felt my heart swell with hope, believing a brighter future awaited me.
Congratulations on receiving the offer. The venue is this way.
On my first day at work, I took the elevator up to the 13th floor and saw a sign in front of me for the orientation reception desk. Steve and the recruiter I'd met during the final interview were manning the reception. I lined up behind the person in front of me. After receiving the materials at the desk, I entered the venue, which had far more people than I had expected. Looking around nervously, I realized that everyone was much younger than me. Of course, that made sense. I was already 32 years old. Even if the others were recent college graduates, there was nearly a 10-year age gap between us. I couldn't help but feel a little out of place. When I finally spotted someone who seemed closer to my age, I noticed they were wearing an employee badge and guiding the new hires. I should be in their position at this age. I had tried not to think about being a high school graduate, but the reality hit me hard, leaving me uncomfortable.
Oh, so you got the offer too.
At first, I didn't realize those words were directed at me and kept looking at the materials I had been given.
How dare you ignore me?
A sudden yell from right beside me startled me. I quickly looked up to see Emma standing next to me. Wait, oh, were you talking to me? I'm sorry. I thought you were speaking to someone else.
No excuses.
Her commanding tone made me fall silent.
An old woman with a high school grad disgrace to the company, let alone a young future employee, and as an inexperienced rookie who can't even respond properly.
Her harsh words left me speechless.
Don't you feel pathetic standing among all these young people? Oh, wait, someone like you probably doesn't even have that kind of pride.
The words high school grad began to catch the attention of those around us.
By the way, didn't you take the entrance exam for the industry's top agency? Know your place, will you?
I could feel my cheeks flush with heat. The thought of being ridiculed in front of 76 other new hires filled me with a mix of frustration and anger. How do you even know about that?
I have connections with the president of that company. When I heard the name Nancy and high school grad, it clicked. I remembered that whiny amateur designer who threw a fit just because we made a few adjustments to her work. Honestly, you should have been grateful for the improvements we made. So, I told them you were just an ignorant, inexperienced designer.
Emma's loud, mocking laugh echoed through the room. I was speechless. Could that be why I wasn't hired? No, the recruiter said they received a phone call from someone claiming to be Nancy to decline the offer. Was it you? Did you pretend to be me and make that call? The words slipped out of my mouth before I could stop them. Emma widened her eyes slightly, then smirked and said something unbelievable.
That's right. I made sure to turn it down for you, so someone as useless as you wouldn't accidentally get hired.
I wanted to argue, but no words came out.
And now, you've somehow ended up here. Fine, work yourself to the bone under me.
Then I quit. I refuse to work with someone like you. I spoke before I could even think. But I have no regrets. There was no future for me in this company. Emma would likely exploit me for everything I had until there was nothing left. Emma was still talking, but I packed up my things and left the venue. As I exited, I saw Steve tidying up at the reception desk. I couldn't avoid passing by him to reach the elevator. I found myself hesitating and couldn't help but laugh at my own foolishness. Did I actually think he might stop me? How ridiculously self-centered. The moment the elevator doors closed, tears started streaming down my face. As I left the venue, Emma's words echoed in my mind.
How dare you humiliate me? I'll do everything I can to destroy your career as a designer.
I might not be able to work in design anymore. In any other industry, who would hire a 32-year-old high school graduate with no qualifications or experience? It seemed like my only option was to juggle part-time jobs while caring for my sick mom just to scrape by. I felt crushed by the loss of my dream and the harsh reality before me. How am I supposed to explain this to Mom? She was so happy for me, saying my dream had come true. If she finds out I decline the offer, will it break her spirit and make her health worse? Lost in these thoughts, I found myself outside the building. Looking up at the towering structure, I felt a pang of sadness, knowing I would never return. It had been 2 whirlwind months since the day I first received that message. Looking back, everything felt like a dream, too surreal to be real. I never imagined that I would walk out of the venue so defiantly in front of so many people. I was surprised at the strength I had found within myself. With nowhere to go, I wandered aimlessly. When I checked my phone to look at the time, I noticed 2 missed calls. One was from an unknown number, but the other was from the advertising agency. Forgetting to check the voicemail, I quickly called back. "Hello, this is Nancy returning your call from earlier." After introducing myself, the person on the other end asked me to hold, and I heard the hold music play. When someone finally picked up, I nearly fell over in shock. The next day, I kept staring at the clock. Taking a deep breath, I mentally rehearsed what was about to happen. It's okay, this is going to work. At 10 o'clock, I called Emma. "Turn on the news." Before she could say anything, I said those words. I could hear some commotion on her end, followed by the sound of a TV turning on.
And now for our next topic. Please welcome the CEO of the advertising agency, David.
The TV showed a feature on David and his company. A clip from the recent entrance exam presentation appeared, prominently displaying my design and my name on the screen. The people in the studio reacted with excitement and admiration.
Her work stood out as the best among the submissions. An ad based on this design will be completed next month. Everyone look forward to it.
The interview with David continued.
What is this? What's going on?
Emma's voice came through the phone, filled with panic. "I'm glad you got to see it. This is the result of being mocked by you."
You weren't supposed to get into that company. So, how are you working on an ad campaign?
Emma's panicked voice brought me a sense of relief. Let me explain step by step. Yesterday, when I returned the missed call, the person who answered after the whole music was David.
A client really liked the design you presented during the entrance exam. Would you be open to letting us use it?
Of course, I was thrilled to accept the offer.
Is there any chance we can get you to join our company?
When David brought this up, I told him everything. That Emma had impersonated me to decline the offer and what had happened at the orientation day.
Let's have a meeting. Come to the office.
David said after listening to my story. When I was escorted into the CEO's office, I was stunned by the advertisement displayed on the wall. It was the very advertisement that had inspired me to become a designer. This is.
You recognize it? That was my debut work.
I was amazed by what felt like a twist of fate. This is the ad that made me want to pursue a career in design. Hearing my eager words, David looked equally surprised.
Really? That makes me happy to hear. Looking back, it's not much technically, but it seems you were able to feel the passion I put into it.
David glanced nostalgically at the ad on the wall before turning back to me to get to the point.
Tomorrow, I'll be making a live TV appearance. I want to showcase your design there.
My design?
Your design and your presentation were outstanding. It would be a shame to let such talent go to waste. I want you to thrive with us.
David's enthusiasm filled me with joy. After resigning myself to the idea that I might never work in design again, his offer felt like a dream come true.
At the same time, could you help me teach Emma a lesson?
I didn't understand what he meant.
Before I started this company, I was her mentor when she joined our previous firm as a new hire.
I was surprised to realize that this was what Emma had meant when she said she had connections.
I thought I taught her everything I knew about advertising design. But since she moved into management, all I've heard are negative rumors about her behavior. And now, this situation at the orientation. It's something I can't ignore.
His voice carried a hint of anger. Since I also wanted to prove Emma wrong, I decided to go along with David's plan. That's why I had you watch the TV broadcast. When I told her, Emma muttered to herself as if speaking aloud unintentionally.
No way. David acknowledged your talent.
By the way, he asked me to pass along a message. This isn't the end, so be prepared. With that, I abruptly ended the call. I had no intention of forgiving Emma for humiliating me in front of the new hires or for trying to sabotage my future. Still, I couldn't deny that David's actions had given me some sense of relief. From now on, I'll start fresh and give it my all under David's guidance. Once again, I made that vow. 2 days later, during a meeting, Emma barged into David's office.
What is the meaning of this?
She threw a freshly released weekly magazine onto David's desk.
What do you mean? It's exactly as it appears. I had everything published in an article.
The weekly magazine featured a large photo of Emma berating me during the orientation. Surrounding it were photos of Emma with different men. Each man was a different individual, making it crystal clear that this wasn't just a typical romance story.
How could you do this?
I couldn't let your selfishness crush the future of talented individuals. You'll now face the consequences of your actions.
With that, David turned on the TV. A talk show was airing footage from the orientation. Apparently, someone had recorded it on their phone. The video had clear audio, capturing Emma berating me in vivid detail.
No. Why?
Because I asked them to.
Emma was visibly stunned as Steve stepped into the room.
Steve, why are you here?
Your recent actions have been intolerable. So, I've been waiting for the opportunity to bring you down.
His voice was so cold that even I felt a chill.
You betrayed me?
Steve shook his head calmly.
I didn't betray you. I was assigned to watch over you from the beginning.
What?
Emma's confused voice echoed in the room. David, wearing a mischievous grin, explained,
Steve is my nephew. I asked him to become your secretary and act as your overseer. His tall, lean figure, refined looks, and gentle smile. He was a perfect match for your preferences, wasn't he?
No way. This can't be true.
Emma collapsed to her knees. I had been just as shocked when I first heard about it. The unknown number that called me on the day of the orientation day turned out to be Steve. After everyone had checked in and the orientation was about to begin, Steve saw me leaving the venue. Panicked, he rushed back inside to ask those around him what had happened. Although he wanted to follow me right away, he held back and decided to contact David instead.
There's nothing I can do to help in my current position, so I'll do what I can. Once you hear this, I recommend reaching out to David. I'm sure he'll be able to help you.
This was the voicemail message he had left. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant, but now it all made sense. Steve first gathered statements from new hires who had witnessed the entire scene. There were multiple people who had recorded the incident on their phones, and it was also captured on a video intended for publicity purposes. However, Steve felt that this alone wasn't enough to hold Emma socially accountable, so he decided to use photos showing her exchanging money for the company of young male employees. Apparently, he had been collecting them for some time, intending to expose her eventually. He took the evidence to a publisher and requested them to publish the story as quickly as possible. Given how much people love scandals like this nowadays, the article was promptly published. Talk shows across the board reported on the story. Emma faced severe backlash from the public.
I won't let it end like this. I'll get my revenge. Just you wait.
Those were Emma's parting words before she disappeared. She likely planned to stay hidden until the uproar died down. But that was a minor detail. Thanks to David and Steve's support, I was able to work as a designer. Steve was busy handling the aftermath of the scandal at the company and seemed overwhelmed.
This isn't your fault, so please don't worry about it. Honestly, it's a relief not having to deal with Emma's selfishness anymore.
However, he was considerate, making an effort to ensure I didn't feel burdened by it. As we both navigated our busy schedules, we kept in touch regularly, and I could feel the distance between us gradually closing. A month had passed, and I had grown accustomed to my job. The chaos surrounding Emma had already subsided, and I thought my routine life would continue. That was when the incident happened. That day, I had plans to meet Steve after work. Since I finished my tasks smoothly, I arrived at the meeting spot 10 minutes early. However, There was no sign of Steve. Even though the chaos had settled, I wondered if Steve was busy with work. Just then, I felt a sudden, heavy impact on my back. The force caused me to stumble and fall to my knees, almost simultaneously with a loud scream echoing around me. Still on my knees, I turned around and saw Emma holding a knife and Steve standing in front of her, gripping the blade with his hand, blood streaming down. Voices shouting to call an ambulance and the police. The sound of screams, people pointing their phones to record. It all felt distant, like a fog clouded my senses, and I couldn't think straight. Emma, who had been frozen in place, had the knife taken from her and was restrained by nearby bystanders. Once Steve saw this, he turned toward me. Using his uninjured hand, he reached out to help me up.
Are you all right?
Hearing his voice, tears began streaming down my face uncontrollably. I shouldn't be crying right now. Even though I knew this, I couldn't stop my tears. Steve, you need to stop the bleeding on your hand immediately. I hastily unfolded a handkerchief and pressed it against his wound, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Are you hurt anywhere else? Are you sure? Startled by my frantic tone, Steve took a small step back and spoke gently.
I'm fine. It's not a serious injury. But are you all right, Nancy? I'm sorry for pushing you so suddenly.
As Steve apologized, I shook my head vigorously. I realized that the impact I felt on my back was Steve's body. Steve had shielded me, putting himself in harm's way to protect me from Emma. I'm fine. I'm sorry. If only I'd been more vigilant.
This isn't your fault, Nancy. I'm just glad you're not hurt. Everyone, I apologize for the commotion.
Steve gently smiled at me before turning to the onlookers and apologizing. Then he faced Emma.
Thank you for restraining her. It's all under control now.
Steve politely thanked the two men holding Emma, and they exchanged glances before letting her go.
Why would you do something like this?
His voice was lower and colder than I'd ever heard before. I couldn't see Steve's face from where I stood, but I could easily imagine the cold glint in his eyes.
Steve, you're mine. If only she weren't here.
Emma muttered, as if talking to herself.
I will never forgive you for trying to hurt Nancy.
Steve declared firmly, and Emma collapsed to her knees.
Why are you protecting Nancy?
In this situation, you are entirely the aggressor.
But it's her fault. She ruined my reputation. I have been condemned by everyone.
That's a consequence of your own actions. Besides, it wasn't Nancy who exposed your misconduct to the public. It was me. If you want to hold a grudge, direct it at me.
Steve's voice, cold to the core, seemed to convey his resolve to take full responsibility on his own. I wanted desperately to refute him, but the atmosphere left no room for me to speak.
Steve, did you really betray me? Was everything you did for me a lie?
Emma looked at him with eyes of a heartbroken puppy. She had probably trusted Steve deeply and even harbored genuine feelings for him.
As I mentioned before, I was assigned to monitor you from the very beginning. From your perspective, it might feel like betrayal, but that was never my intention. And saying I was devoted to you would be misleading. I was simply fulfilling my duties with integrity. I never had a personal relationship with you.
Both Emma and I were stunned by his words. I had assumed the two of them were involved. Emma opened and closed her mouth silently, unable to form words.
I apologize for being ambiguous at times and for using your feelings to some extent. But let's be honest. You weren't completely serious about me, were you?
That's not true. I thought I had something special with you.
If that's the case, why were you pursuing relationships with other men?
That's
Emma trailed off and fell silent. It seemed she couldn't come up with any words to deny it.
You only see men as accessories, choosing them based on your mood at the time. I can't keep up with someone like that. I have no feelings for you whatsoever.
Hearing these blunt words, Emma broke down in tears. Before long, paramedics and the police arrived. Steve and I got into the ambulance, while Emma was arrested on the spot for assault.
Don't leave me. Don't abandon me.
Emma reached out desperately. Seeing her like that, I couldn't remain silent. As I moved toward her, Steve quickly grabbed my arm to stop me. But I couldn't keep relying on him to protect me. I have to say what needs to be said myself. Stop playing the victim. All of this is the result of your own actions. Trying to keep people with money won't win their hearts. Because you didn't treat people sincerely, everyone left you. Emma seemed to give up and silently allowed the police to take her away. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison for assault. She was, of course, fired from the company, and after her release, she couldn't find a new job. With almost no savings left, she lost her house, car, money, job, and even the men in her life. She ended up living day to day, with no means to maintain her appearance, and she seemed to have aged overnight. I'm now working as a designer at David's company. It's a merit-based workplace, and even as a high school graduate, I'm entrusted with more and more responsibilities, for which I'm grateful. Steve's now working as David's assistant. His injury didn't require stitches and was treated with disinfectant and bandages. Since that incident, Steve and I have grown much closer. It turned out that my feeling of having met Steve somewhere before wasn't a mistake. He revealed that we had actually met in elementary school. That's why when we first met at the company among so many other people, he approached me without hesitation. Even when he served me coffee, he placed it in a way that made it easy for me, a left-hander, to pick up. He even knew about my mom's illness. When I was in elementary school, there was a boy who went to a different school, and I could only meet him at the park. One day, without saying goodbye, he suddenly stopped coming to the park. That boy was Steve. He explained that his family had moved overseas for his parents' work. After graduating from college and returning to the US, he came across a drawing of that park on social media. He was certain it was my work and decided to send me a message, thinking he might be able to help me in some way. The message I thought was from Emma was actually sent by Steve. It was Steve who provided me with the information about the advertising agency's entrance exam. And he was also the one who told David to send the message about my supposed withdrawal from the job offer. When I learned that Steve had been orchestrating everything behind the scenes over those chaotic 2 months, I couldn't hide my shock.
Remember what I promised you back in elementary school? That I'd always protect you, Nancy.
Steve gave a playful smile. His eyes locked onto mine with such intensity that I couldn't look away.
Nancy, I love you. I've loved you ever since elementary school, and my feelings haven't changed.
At 32, with no romantic prospects to speak of, my mom had often worried about me. I was sure she'd finally feel at ease now. I felt deeply grateful for the happiness I had found, both in my personal and professional life.